Should Floyd Shivambu be the Minister of Finance? This is one of the questions South Africans must answer on the 29th of May. Shivambu will be the EFF's candidate for Minister of Finance should the EFF win an outright majority. And giving him the position is one of the conditions the EFF have for an ANC-EFF coalition. So, would Floyd Shivambu be a good Minister of Finance? According to some, he has all the tools. Well, this is Floyd's profile on X, and I'd like to point out that he claims to be an activist who believes in the Labour theory of value. Now, most people who read this will have no idea what it means or why it's important. But surely, the number one requirement for a Minister of Finance is a sound understanding of economics. They would need to know how to manage a modern economy and how to grow the economy to provide economic freedom. As a Marxist socialist, Floyd Shivambu and the EFF's economic ideology is tied to this idea known as the Labour theory of value. This is not a theory that Marx invented, but he did rely on it to support his ideology. Without the Labour theory of value, Marxism is nothing more than an envy-driven ideology of hate. As defined by Investopedia, the Labour theory of value was an early attempt by economists to explain why goods were exchanged for certain relative prices on the market. It suggested that the value of a commodity was determined by and could be measured objectively by the average number of labour hours necessary to produce it. In the Labour theory of value, the amount of labour that goes into producing an economic good is the source of that good's value. In simple terms, the theory claims that the value of an item or service can be measured by the labour time that goes into making it, and nothing else. So what is the problem with this theory? Well, the Labour theory of value was disproven more than 100 years ago, and is not even taught in modern economics. The Labour theory of value assumes that the value of a product is solely derived from the amount of labour invested in its production. However, we know that market value is influenced by subjective factors such as consumer preference, scarcity, and utility. In other words, if nobody wants it or needs it, it has no value. And if people want or need something, it has value, regardless of how long it took to make. Marx was not ignorant. Even he saw the flaws in the Labour theory of value and tried desperately to explain them away. He attempted to conceal an obvious flaw by claiming that it was socially necessary labour that determined value. In other words, the theory could not be applied to things such as works of art. For example, if two artists both spent 100 hours on a painting, and one created a masterpiece while the other produced something nobody wanted, then the value of their work was not determined by their labour, but by other factors such as consumer preference. But if the value of some items can be influenced by factors other than labour time, why not all items? The Labour theory of value is simply nonsensical. Marx's concession also exposes another flaw. The Labour theory of value fails to account for the difference in skill and productivity among workers. Not all labour is equal, as individuals possess varying levels of skill, experience, and efficiency. The Labour theory of value oversimplifies this diversity and treats all labour as homogeneous, neglecting the impact of human capital on the production process. For example, if it takes an unqualified person an hour to mow the lawn, and it takes a trained surgeon 1 hour to perform life-saving surgery, the Labour theory of value would claim that these two services have the same value. But in reality, people would pay much more for life-saving surgery than they would to have their lawn cut. Additionally, the theory struggles to explain the role of capital and technology in value creation. In modern economics, factors like machinery, innovation, and technology significantly contribute to the production process. The Labour theory of value, however, tends to downplay the roles of these non-labour inputs in determining the value of goods or services. The Labour theory of value claims that only the person doing the physical labour on the product itself adds any value to the item. Let's imagine that Bob works for a popular coffee shop. it takes him 10 minutes to make a cappuccino, and the shop sells a cappuccino for 30 Rand. Bob can make 4 cappuccinos in an hour, earning the shop 120 Rand, but he's only paid 30 Rand an hour. According to Marx and the labor theory of value, the shop would be making a profit of 90 Rand from Bob's labor, without adding anything. Marx called this surplus value, and claimed it was proof that the workers were exploited by the business owner. But this is simply not true. First, Bob and the shop entered into a contract willingly. Secondly, without Bob, the shop could simply employ someone else. They don't need Bob. Bob's labor, on the other hand, has no value without the shop. For Bob's labor to be worth the 120 Rand an hour, he would first need to come up with the idea of the coffee shop. Then he would need to buy all the equipment needed to set up the coffee shop, market the shop, and create a brand that people would be willing to spend their money on. Without all these things, Bob's time has no value. The shop is not exploiting Bob. On the contrary, it is the shop that gives Bob's time value as labor. So why do Marxists like Shivambu love the labor theory of value? Because all of Marxist ideology is dependent on this theory. Marx used the theory of surplus value to support his claim that workers were oppressed and had the right to seize the means of production. However, this itself proves the hypocrisy of Marxism, because if only labor adds value, then there is no value in the means of production, and therefore there would be no need to seize it. Of course, Marx knew that the means of production, the capital required to start any business, had value. Yet he chose to still mislead people, and this deception has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. And likewise, the EFF claims to believe in the labor theory of value, but also calls for the nationalization of assets and the expropriation of land, and demonizes capital investment with terms like white monopoly capital. But if you believe in the labor theory of value, then there would be no need to expropriate land. Like I said, Marx was fully aware that capital played a significant role in value creation, and this value has been demonstrated every time there has been a Marxist revolution. After the Russian Revolution, land was expropriated and millions of people starved to death as a result. The same thing happened when the communists seized land in China, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. When Zimbabwe seized land, it also resulted in disaster for the country and economic collapse. This is because the value of labor is created by the capital that makes that labor possible. Without capital in the form of innovation, investment, machinery, operating funds, knowledge and experience, there is no labor and so no production. To summarize, the labor theory of value fails to account for the subjective nature of value, the diversity of labor skills, and the impact of capital and technology on production. The EFF claims to be economic freedom fighters, but their entire movement is built on an ideology that is based on a flawed economic theory. It doesn't matter how much they claim to care about black people, or how many protests they stage, or how often they disrupt parliament. The fact of the matter is that they have a flawed economic theory, which cannot possibly result in economic growth and therefore cannot provide economic freedom. South Africa is economically sick because the country has been poisoned by leftist economic theories. To fix the economy and to create true economic freedom, we need to elect people who understand economics and will implement economic policies that will promote growth. If Floyd Shivambu is made Minister of Finance, it will be a financial disaster for South Africans, and it will be the poor who suffer the most. The EFF are not fighting for economic freedom, they are fighting the possibility of economic freedom.